one of the writers that I have really grown to appreciate her wisdom is Karen Armstrong. And she has become one of the loudest voices in favor of what's called the Charter for Compassion. She has written several books on violence in the Middle East, or how religion has often perpetrated violence in the world. So this Charter of Compassion, I remember that she said that one of the fascinating things is one of the great sages of ancient Judaism, when asked, as Jesus was asked, what is the greatest law? And the sage said, whatever it is, it should be able to be spoken as you stand on one foot. Now imagine how long it's going to stay, especially as I've gotten older. My balance isn't always the best. So imagine what that's like. And she said it is simply this: love your neighbor as yourself. Of course, love God with everything you have. Every part of your body, every commitment, every part of your personhood, everything that you are involved in is to be shaped and formed by the way that not only you love God, but equally love everyone else around you. I would imagine that for all of us, that in our families, whether it was, as Erica shared, her grandmother, our mothers or our grandmothers or our great-grandmothers, and it could probably go back generation to generation to generation. I know as I've done the ancestry trees of my family, it's just amazing to be able to visualize, thinking of my Irish ancestors who became a caravan of boats coming across the sea in the 1840s and early 1850s, fleeing the potato famine in Ireland, and seeing several of my Irish ancestors who date to that time period, knowing, as I found, a couple had come through immigration in 1850. So right at that time, when hundreds and hundreds, over 2 million, you know that? Over 2 million Irish people came in boats, like a modern caravan, so to speak, to this country because they believed it was a land of opportunity for them. As my Irish ancestors came, to be honest, I prize more my German side of my family since it was much more rational and disciplined and calm than the Irish side that I convinced drank and sang songs and made merry, and the Germans were much more easy to associate with at that time. Until now I find out that I'm 49% Irish and less German in that. So now I'm beginning to appreciate more the Celtic tradition and the singing and the dancing and maybe the drinking as a part of it. I'd say that because each generation that we can go back, and however far back that you can reach, and even further back in imagining, that every single one of those women and men back through the generations had to struggle often to make ends meet, had to struggle to provide for their children, had to struggle to imagine what was going to come in their lives for the future. And I'm sure that as any of us who come from Irish ancestors, that the thought of death was always close at hand for them. And yet they stayed strong in their faith. They stayed strong in their commitment to provide a core of values in their family around which their lives were to revolve. The core values, as we hear, going all the way back into the book of Deuteronomy, back to the 6th century before the Common Era. Love God with everything you have. And flowing from that, love your neighbor as yourself. That's the core. That's the core values. That to have anything less, as Karen Armstrong says, than we do, we end up in violence and hate and prejudice and discrimination. And so the legacy of our ancestors was to hand on to their children, to their grandchildren, and so forth, a commitment to not just love God, but a commitment to be full human beings in the way that we love others. That's the legacy. That's the tradition. I've often said in several places, what if, close to 40 years ago now, that the several families, and I have to tell you, I visited Isla Durian in this week, and she is very concerned about our community, seeing it grow from just a few families, few committed people, that she's concerned. Here she is, in not the best of shape, to be honest, and she's still concerned about us. She's still interested in what this church is doing because she knows what it has done over the 40 years. Many of you have almost been here the same amount of time. Bart Carlson, another of our charter members, and others. The commitment that was made was renewed every year in terms of the covenant that we aren't just here to occupy space in a moment in time, but we are here to stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us, committed to loving God and loving neighbor, as well as being a witness in Sun Lakes, in South Chandler, a witness to what the gospel asks of us in particular. Because when you think about loving God and loving neighbor, it absolutely commits us to a path of justice and a path of peace in the world. It cannot be any other way. The gospel doesn't commit us to turn our backs on those who in need. It doesn't commit us to engaging in violence and hate. Rather, as Karen Armstrong has helped me understand, it commits us to a compassionate way of living in the world with each other. If we weren't here as a congregation, would anybody miss us? That we are here means that the legacy we stand with has been firm and will be firm. I think of all these wonderful people, and I looked at them. Of course, the pictures of our members were taken for a photo directory, and everybody's smiling. But I have to think, and even the ones on the altar, they're smiling at us now, aren't they? They say, you, we, us, have to be committed to the legacy that they were committed to, so that in 10 to 20 to 30 years, this congregation is still able to say, we love God, we love our neighbors, and we will commit to being witnesses to gospel justice, to living in peace, and to truly being agents and instruments of God's reign. They're smiling at us, expecting us today to carry on the legacy of faith in this community.